This is episode 21 of the Bluegrass Blues podcast. I'm Jesse.
And I'm Amy.
It sounds like the planes are active today. We are right on the flight path, so we will hear planes coming over, and it's usually FedEx coming over pretty
UPS.
Oh, right, UPS.
We're a big hub.
Yeah, we're the big hub. So you'll hear airlines landing in the background, but anyway, that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're going to talk about the month of February, and it is Black History Month. Which
can't you tell by all the good stuff that's happening in the country?
Yeah, or by all the amazing comments we're getting. But it is Black History Month. There are plenty of things to be aware of this month. But I think the important thing to look at is just what is the history. And there was a historical thing that happened. Was it today? Jesse Jackson died. So, I mean, he was a huge figure in the civil rights movement. He was there when Martin Luther King Jr. was shot. He ran for president and was actually a viable candidate when he ran for president. The thing was that when he was alive and when he was in his prime, if you wanted to ask a question about the black community, that was the person you would go to. He was just like sort of the designated black person for all of media. But he's left a long legacy. He created Operation Push. He did keep just the idea of civil rights in the forefront all these years. And that seems to have been, it's been sort of whittled away, not the idea of civil rights, but the support of civil rights is being whittled away every day. And we see that with, just the basic one where we have ICE running around in all our communities, seizing people who are brown or persecuting people who are black.
You have Donald Trump portraying the Obamas as apes.
Right, and that works for him. And the thing is that he casts the Obamas as apes at the end of some childish video, which he constantly posts, and he says that it was done by a staffer. So you ask anyone in the administration, well, was that staffer fired? And no, there's no word on that at all. And
then we've got Andy Barr here, and he just released a 30-second ad, and basically he's running for Mitch McConnell's Senate seat. He's pictured on a farm. The sun is shining. There is a barn and an American flag behind him, and he says, you know what DEI really stands for? He says, smiling. Dumb, evil, indoctrination. Black History Month.
Yeah, well, the thing that I find interesting about this is that Andy Barr has decided that racism is going to work for him. Mm-hmm. And that is his belief in terms of what the people of Kentucky are all about. If that's true, then we're in a really sad state. But I'm sure he's looking at the numbers and he's figuring, okay, the white population of Kentucky is 80%. That's the votes he has to get right now. And he figures that if he's in a three-way race against, three people who are going to deny black history, including a black person, that would be David Cameron, that seems to be his logic for running. And this is, it's typical of politicians in certain places. If you're on the right, you move as far to the right as you can for the primary. You get the true believers, and then when the general election rolls around, you go toward the middle. But there is no middle anymore.
No.
The middle is swung so far to the right that the middle is the right.
And at the end of his ad, listen to this. He says, I'm Andy Barr. It's not a sin to be white. It's not against the law to be male, and it shouldn't be disqualifying to be a Christian. I'm Andy Barr, and I approve this message to give woke liberals something else to cry about.
And what is this crying. It's like, okay, he's going to inflict pain is what he wants to do. And again, he is believing that the people of Kentucky support this, which is very troubling, because if he's right, then there's no hope for us.
No.
And if it would be nice if the people of the state proved he was wrong. And there is some, in other parts of the country, there is some indication that the MAGA fever is breaking. If you look at special elections throughout the country, Democrats have been winning by huge margins, and not only winning by huge margins, they're winning in places that went for Trump overwhelmingly in the last election. So there is a major shift. We haven't seen this shift in Kentucky. Well, we have sort of seen it, because we did have an election here in Louisville recently, and a former union official was
Right.
elected to state rep.
Yeah, Gary Clemens.
Yeah. So
And Jesse, you were telling me something really interesting earlier about, this talks about sort of hate and the history of hate.
Right.
I'd love for you to just...
Yeah, well, there's, if you look at American history, it's,
And I think it's human history.
Yeah, human history, American history, there's this foundation of progression through hatred. So if you look at American history, people come from another place, actually immigrants come from another country. They find that the Native American population is here, and instead of respecting that population, they killed them. They just decided to wipe them out, and brought in specific diseases. They brought in guns. They brought in Christianity. They did everything they could to eliminate the ethnicity of the Native Americans. And the result of that is that Native Americans are now confined to a specific part of the country where ICE agents are now stopping in Native Americans.
Right.
It's like, this is the peak in absurdity, where ICE agents, who are all the children of immigrants, are going to harass Native Americans who, this is where they're from.
Yeah, and I just want to mention as a naturalist that if you think about indigenous peoples and the wisdom that they impart, they are one with the land, they are one with water and soil and sky, and there's this humility with regards to our planet. And then you have the colonizers come, and it's just for profit, it's for people. They subjugate the land, they oppress people. You could talk about slavery now.
Right. And the thing is that if you look at the issue of slavery, that was one of the great scars on American history, but you have a whole portion of the population who thinks that it was okay, and they still think it was okay. But, that slavery then leads into things like Reconstruction and the rise of the Ku Klux Klan, where, black people were actually given rights, and the Klan decided they were going to take it away. So you've got that part of American history going, but when the civil rights movement was going on back in the early to mid 20th century, we also had the scare against communism, and that was another focus of hatred, where we can unify as a country to hate this group now because that's communism, and communism is bad. And that went through the 70s, the 80s, 90s, up into the fall of the Berlin Wall, where communism didn't become an issue.
Well, and I think the residual attacks on socialists now,
Right. Yeah, even in that, people were against communism, and they didn't know what it was, because if you ask a person what's a socialist, they don't know what that means. They just know it's a bad word.
Right.
And when communism died, then who was there to hate? And now it's become liberals. I think that's the whole
Well,
thing.
and you mentioned, of course, 9/11. So.
Oh, right. Yeah, that we had the Muslim hatred that was going on. That still goes on today with the ICE intrusion into our neighborhoods. So, there's this consistency of hatred in American history that has gotten us to this point now where, because we've run out of other groups to hate, we're now directing our hate inwards.
And I would like to overlay the fact that sexism has been an overlay with all of this as well. Roe v. Wade was overturned, and we've been fighting to get the Epstein files released. And we even have, U.S. Representative Thomas Massey here of Kentucky, like the only Republican who is really pushing to get the Epstein files released. And he's been called a moron by Trump. And something happened this month at the Lincoln Day dinner in Oldham County where Kentucky House Speaker David Osborne yanked the microphone off the podium as U.S. Representative Thomas Massey was saying, the chain of command does not go to the commander-in-chief when you are a congressman. You work not for the Speaker of the House, you work for the people. And then he was called a moron and booed off stage.
Yeah, the thing too about Massey is, you look at politicians and you wonder, well, what's their popularity in their districts? And I just did a quick search, and it looks like Massey's approval rating in his district's about 44%, which is less than the majority, but if you compare it to the approval rating of Congress in general, that's like at 14%. So Massey's doing a lot better than Congress is in general, which, and the thing is, I'm not a Thomas Massey fan.
Right.
If I had the choice to vote for him and someone, a Democrat, I'm going to vote for a Democrat. But if he's the choice you have and he's the only one standing up to this administration, then he deserves to still be in Congress, because there are no Republican voices who are doing what he's doing. And again, I'm not a Massey fan, but he is, what he's doing is defending children. And, you have to give credit to that, because we have a lot of billionaires who are, as the Epstein files have shown, they feel that they are immune to any kind of repercussions for any of the evil they do. And we can get into more of that later, but this is a person who's standing up to the billionaire class or to the powerful, and he's getting ostracized by people within his own party in this state, which raises a big question, because this state has a high level of child abuse and child
Very
rape.
high.
So the people who are against Massey are in essence saying that they're for child abuse.
Child rape.
So, these are things that you can, I give Massey the benefit of a doubt on all of this, because he is standing up to authoritarian power and toward...
and the patriarchy in this
billionaire
case.
Patriarchy in this case. So, we can talk about Massey actually standing up for the rights of children, which is good, but then we're still in Black History Month,
right.
And I'm sure Massey is not going to be a big fan of Black History Month. But even with that, there's a Republican legislator, a state senator, or state...
Donald Douglas from Nicholasville.
Yeah, and he's a black guy, but he's also introduced a law that...
Senate Bill 72.
Yeah, that will will allow doctors to refuse to treat patients based on their ethical or religious beliefs.
Religious, moral, or ethical principles.
Right.
Their consciences.
Yeah, so this is, we know what that means. He wants trans people to not be treated. That's essentially it, because that's what Andy Barr is running on in his platform when Andy Barr says things like, we don't want boys in girls sports, which,
It's not just that, it's abortion care.
Yeah. Yeah.
In addition to the gender and
everything
care.
involving women's rights and women's bodies. That is, it's just like they decide what they want to do with other people's bodies, but they also are deciding that they're not going to treat other people's bodies. So, and this is what is amazing about this is that this is a black person, and he doesn't seem to realize that a doctor can say, well, I don't want to treat black people. because I just don't, it's not part of my ethical beliefs or whatever. And there are people who will do things like that, because I was listening to, or I was reading something where there was like a nurse who was breaking the bones of black babies. And this is like, these are the horrors we have to deal with, and I'm sure you all heard that train in the background, but there are things that we are dealing with these days that it just is showing that we're sort of declining as moral and moral responsibilities.
Another thing I noticed, Jesse, is, we've been talking about how in our state legislature right now, it's very difficult for the public to have access to legislators, to committee, discussions, etc. And, I was reading about these national right-wing pushes to pass medical conscience laws. And I read that a staff member from an influential Christian legal organization called Alliance Defending Freedom sat with Douglas in the committee hearing earlier this week in support of the bill. So somehow the people in this state who have real issues are not allowed to participate in our legislative process, but you have this lobbyist who wants to take our health care rights away, who's sitting with our state senator. I wonder how much he pays him.
Yeah, well, these are all contributions. The lobbyists are paying for, the lobbyists have the money of very rich people to pay for politicians to do what they want them to do. There's also just the whole budget issue that we have to get into as well.
Right.
There's what's like $2.5 billion or $3 billion.
Yeah, so, the budget is a moral document, and I just wanted to mention that Jesse and I have a really good state senator, who's Senator Keturah Herron, who, by the way, is the first out queer person in the state legislature, and she entered in 2022. And she's incredibly thoughtful, and if you're in our district here in Old Louisville, and the surrounding areas, she sends out a weekly email blast about legislative updates, and it's a really good way to stay abreast of what's happening. But essentially, and I'm going to sort of speak from an article by Jason Bailey, who's the president of the Kentucky Center for Economic Progress. Let's see if I got that right. I think I did. Kentucky Center for Economic Policy. So, basically the Republicans who have a supermajority in the Kentucky state legislature want to pass a bare bones budget that contains huge cuts despite leaving more than $1 billion in projected revenue unspent. And as a finance person, basically, every state is supposed to have a reserve, right? And typically, the reservists say 10% of the budget is held in reserve. Well, right now, our reserve trust fund sits at $3.7 billion, which is 24% of the state revenues, far exceeding the 10% necessary, right? And so what they're doing is they're starving Kentuckians, right? And basically, this budget, it basically spends $800 million less than needed to fund Medicaid. It puts 35 rural hospitals at risk. It does not include costs for SNAP food assistance that have been passed on to the states by the federal government. It cuts higher ed again, putting funding for those institutions 43% below inflation-adjusted 2008 levels. And it cuts SEEK payments to K through 12 education by over $100 million, continuing 20 years of state disinvestment in Kentucky public schools. So, you've got this poor state, and we've got very high cancer rates, all kinds of issues. And the Republicans don't want to fund the state. Plus, not only that, they keep lowering the income tax of the richest people in the state. And And the reduction of the top income tax rate from 5% in 2022 to 3.5% today costs us $2.1 billion a year.
Money that can do a lot to improve the quality of life in the state.
But people don't know this. We're not educated about it, and we don't know how to vote for the people who will represent us in the state.
And the other thing, too, and this is still going on, but the legislature is pretty much banning the public from participating because they've closed off certain access to meetings since they've done this renovation of the Capitol.
Right.
So,
Well, and the other thing I want to say is there was a poll done that reveals that Kentuckians want legislators to have different priorities. Only 28% said lawmakers should focus on reducing taxes for everyone, even if most of the benefits go to the wealthy, while 72% said legislators should focus instead on improving schools, improving health care, and bringing down the cost of living.
Okay, and we should emphasize here that legislators in Kentucky means politicians. Not politicians, but Republican politicians.
Yes.
Because if Democrats
sure.
were in charge, a lot of this stuff would be going through, like the funding would be going through, the funding would be there for the communities, but you have a supermajority of Republicans in the legislature. They are following the designs and will of what the president wants,
Right.
And that isn't necessarily what the people want, because as we know, and we can get into the Epstein files later, but the Epstein files are full of Donald Trump and full of Donald Trump supporters, and it's full of very rich people.
We noticed one of the billionaires not in the Epstein files was George Soros.
Yes, the bane of the Republican right is not one of the Epstein files people, which says something about the morality of the people in the Epstein files.
Right.
It also says that George Soros is not the evil person that the right says he is, because the evil people are on the right. And you look at the names that are coming out, they're all Trump supporters, they're all Trump financiers, they're all Trump flunkies. And, these are, it's scary. Anyone who's paying attention to what's coming out of the Epstein files should be horrified by the names of the people showing up, because these are the richest people in the world. These are the most powerful people in the world, and these are the most well-known people. They're not only in politics, they're in business, they're in academia, they are everywhere.
It was interesting, Jesse, you lived in Belgium, and I noticed that Europe is taking a far harsher stance of Europeans. The former Prince Andrew, for example, shows up in the Epstein files, and they seem to really be taking it a lot more seriously than we are.
No, they're actually firing people in the British government. I think there's an ambassador who's out of a job. They're also looking at royal families in other countries. There are other billionaires, global billionaires, who are in the files, and the names that are showing up. It's kind of odd, but if you look at the richest people on the Forbes billionaire list, you're going to see a lot of people who are in the Epstein files.
Right.
I'm just glancing through. For example, I don't see Warren Buffett. But
Right.
you see Bill Gates, and you see Jeff Bezos, and you see
Elon Musk.
And it's and they see the emails that they were sending to Epstein, and some of them are just horrific because they're talking about molesting children, and it's like in couched words, but the idea is that, bring your harem with you, as one billionaire wrote to Epstein, or others saying, when's the next party? I think Elon Musk was asking when the next big party is. But it's not only that, it's people who are, who maintained contact with him even after they knew that he had been arrested and prosecuted and convicted for raping children. So there's just that idea that the very rich are very dangerous.
Yeah, but I would extend it to the Republican Party. This immorality. I want to bring local now. So, Louisville Metro Council, we have our Metro Council representative in District 6 is Democrat J.P. Lininger, and he brought a proposal that would have made it illegal in Louisville for people to wear masks in public for the purpose of concealing their occupation. So in other words, it would have applied to local, state, and federal law enforcement, including ICE agents. And it failed. Metro Council overturned this and did not approve this mask ban. I find that completely immoral and sad, and we should be firing these people at a local level.
Well, it's not only that they're allowing them to remain masked, they're also essentially allowing them to not be identified at all because they don't put their names on their uniforms. They're just these people who come out of nowhere, probably they're probably the people who were invading the Capitol on January 6th. But you've got these people who, the ICE agents are going into communities. They're disrupting life in general. The administration has no respect for anything.
And the detention facilities that are expanding, they're taking warehouse space, including here in Louisville, across the nation, and they're going to repurpose these warehouses into detention facilities. And of course, these detention facilities are owned by rich people.
Yeah.
So it's a for-profit, cruel, unbelievable practice. And I just wanted to mention that, with my work in L-Surge, Louisville Showing Up for Racial Justice, I accompanied a woman who was here with a work visa and has 2 children whom I believe were born here, and she had a court date in federal court, and we accompanied her, and we were looking out for ICE. The good news was ICE didn't show up that day, and she got an extension to stay here. The bad news is this woman was absolutely terrified. She wasn't going to come to court, and then she couldn't get out of her car for a while. And it is so wrong what is happening to human beings in our communities. Mm-hmm. It is so wrong. These are humans. These are our neighbors. And I just find it completely unconscionable.
Well, I also find it unconscionable that our mayor has done nothing to prevent this and actually has encouraged this, because this is allegedly a Democratic mayor. And instead of, you could either even slow walking something, he's not doing that. He's just saying, okay, come on in, do what you must. And the ICE is running around all of Louisville.
They are. And in fact, many of us here in Louisville go to Hawk's Corner. It used to be a pharmacy in Germantown. And there was a Cuban chef there that was taken by ICE right from work, just a couple weeks ago. And in our neighborhood, we've had ICE activity. I just want to mention while I'm thinking of it that we want everybody in the Louisville metropolitan area to know this hotline number. If you see any ICE activity, if you could call our hotline at 502-830-9398 and give us information, how many people, what do the cars look like, what are they wearing, what kind of weapons are they carrying, and the location, that would be really helpful. We have a 24-hour hotline, and more Louisvillians are stepping up to get trained in community defense. So please have that hotline number ready, and let us know if you see any ICE.
Right, and the ICE is everywhere here, so we can't.
Don't fool yourselves that it's over there in Minneapolis, St. Paul, or over there in another city. It's right here.
Well, and
it's all over the state.
But one of the reasons you know about it in other places is because there's better media
I know.
in other places.
Right.
And
let's talk about that.
Well, yeah. Well, everyone knows my frustration with the local paper. I used to work here. It's just a disappointment when you see things, and we've talked about this many times, where there activities happen that are either against ICE or whatever, and they're never reported. When there are large gatherings of people, the numbers are underreported, or it's not reported at all. We've had major demonstrations here that have had very minimal coverage. And, this is not just a problem with the local paper. This is a problem with national papers. And I guess this is the time to talk about the Washington Post, because that was one of my former jobs. And I was at the Post when Jeff Bezos took over. I was at the Wall Street Journal before that. And just the news was last week that the Washington Post essentially fired a third of its staff, a third of its reporting staff. So that is, it's now fewer people or fewer reporters at the Post than when Jeff Bezos took over. And Jeff Bezos' hiring, or Jeff Bezos' takeover, was supposed to ensure the expansion of the Washington Post. And when Bezos took over, the Post was doing some very important work, and it was getting a lot of notices. More people were reading. If you look at the historical trend, the Post had at one point more readers than the New York Times did. And this was soon after Bezos took over, because at that time the Post was doing stories that people were really reading. And the fact was that this was the first Trump administration, and the Post numbers were huge during that time.
And was Marty Barron in charge?
Marty Barron was in charge of the Post. So you look at that in hindsight. Then Bezos decides that, Bezos pays like $250 million for the Post. And when Marty Barron left, they bought in a new editor, Sally Busby, who was doing fine. She was doing fine. The Post was still doing great work. But then Bezos hires this guy from News Corp named Will Lewis. And we're not related. We're both Lewises, but we're not related. He was in London the same time I was in London, but he was working for a different News Corp operation. And during that time, he was one of the people responsible for just destroying a bunch of emails that were needed for an investigation into Rupert Murdoch's news organization's coverage of certain stories, because they were illegally hacking the phones of people. And the horror story here was that there was one phone that was a girl who was murdered. People couldn't find her. The News Corp people hacked her phone, making police think that she was still alive. But they were just getting information. They were also hacking the phones of very famous people like Hugh Grant and Prince Harry. And the government said, don't destroy the emails, and Will Lewis essentially destroyed the emails. So he does that in London. His reward is he's sent to become the publisher of the Wall Street Journal. And so he does that a few years. Then he's bought on to the Washington Post by Jeff Bezos, where he introduces it used to be democracy dies in darkness,
right.
But then they changed their slogan to something like markets and business and whatever. But the slogan was essentially what the Wall Street Journal slogan was. And Will Lewis brought in a bunch of people from the Journal to run the Post. One of the things he said when he started was that the reason the Post was losing readers was because we weren't writing about what people wanted to read. Which, what people want to read is what the Trump administration is doing. And that was essentially, they'll say it wasn't, but Bezos has been more acquiescent to the Trump administration now than he was before. And so they gave this argument that, okay, you're not writing what people want to read, but they're doing things like not endorsing Kamala Harris. There was an endorsement for Kamala Harris ready to go. Either Bezos or Will Lewis said, no, don't run that. So this is the first sign where they're just completely not respecting the views of their readers, which
Well,
is...
they're not. They have no journalistic integrity anymore because of this. They're bought by this billionaire in this country.
Right, and my thoughts on Bezos when he bought the Post was the Post needed help. He said he wasn't going to interfere. He didn't interfere during the Marty Baron tenure. When Trump was elected the second time, Bezos does the Melania documentary. Bezos
Right.
does the donations to the East Wing destruction. So and he's showing
And
up
he
the
didn't
inauguration.
endorse. Remember?
He did what?
He wouldn't endorse. He took away endorsements.
Oh yeah, that was
That was
the
huge.
Kamala Harris endorsement
Yeah.
that was taken away. So, and then as the readership goes down because people are pissed off at the things that the Post was doing by not covering the Trump administration, by not giving the endorsements, by changing their policy because that didn't represent the financial interest of Jeff Bezos. So, that just completely makes the numbers go down, and as a result of that, you lose the readership, and readership goes down, so it's steadily going down. And again, they're blaming the reporters for not covering things that people want to read when they're essentially the things that people want to read, they're not letting the reporters report.
Right. And
So
we're, look at the defections at CBS now, CBS News, just media in general. We really are looking a lot more like an authoritarian state.
Right. And the other part of it, too, is that one of the arguments they're using for getting rid of the people at the Washington Post was that it was losing $100 million a year. So that comment reminded me of, I'm going to go into classic movies now, but there's a line in Citizen Kane where Charles Foster Kane, played by Orson Welles, is talking with his guardian who took him from his home when he was a little boy because they lived on an oil field that made Kane millions and millions of dollars. And so this guardian, who's also watching the money, is complaining that Kane has bought this newspaper where he's losing $1 million a year. And, there's this really great speech, and I'll include that clip in the post on this, but there's this speech that Kane gives about being a rich person and representing the interest of people who can't defend themselves. So this is very idealistic in the past. And the Guardian, has said that, okay, you're losing $1 million a year. And Kane essentially says, okay, I know I'm going to lose $1 million a year. I know I'm going to lose $1 million next year. I'm probably going to lose $1 million the year after that. And at this rate, I'll run out of money in 60 years. So I took that perspective and I decided, okay, what does this mean in terms of Jeff Bezos? So it's the Washington Post is losing $100 million a year. If Jeff Bezos is like Kane, let's say they lose $100 million again next year and $100 million a year after that. At that rate, Jeff Bezos would run out of money in 2,000 years. And so, there's this idea that he's so wealthy, and they're giving us this bullshit argument about losing money when, this is what they're losing in a year is, as I've said in many times, it's the change in Jeff Bezos' couch. And they could easily handle the finances on this if they're doing a public service.
No, it's corruption.
Well, it's corruption, but it's this idea that wealth has taken over, and it's still, just running rampant through everything we do these days, and that's what controls us. That's where we have, again, again, billionaires who are buying politicians.
Well,
who are,
we saw, what is it, Elon Musk put $10 million into Nate Morris's campaign.
and Elon Musk, let's talk about this billionaire. He now has $800 billion. He's like $200 billion from $1 trillion. And he's putting, like you said, $10 million into Nate Morris's campaign. That's nothing. That's
Couch change.
That's a penny. That's pennies. So we are
A shopping cart at Aldi.
right. we are just like we've talked about the budget and how Kentuckians are suffering because of the budget crisis. We're talking
It shouldn't be a budget crisis, by the
there
way.
is
We
no,
have money.
but the thing is, there is no crisis.
Right.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
There's just the concept that there's money there, but you're not giving it to the population. You're giving it to a couple of very rich people. A couple of very rich people who think they can get away with anything they want to do because they're very rich people. So, it's we've got to really just, as citizens, we have to understand that we do have the power to stop these things.
Yeah.
And if we go out and vote, and they're going to do everything they can to stop us from voting.
Right, like me with this, is it called the SAVE Act?
Yeah.
If women don't have the same name that's on their birth certificate, we may not be able to vote. Can you imagine and some men, my first husband changed his name too. But if your name is not the same as on your birth certificate, you may not have the right to vote.
Right. You'll go into the. I think in a lot of cases you will be able to vote, but if they decide that, if the Republicans decide, okay, we're not going to let people in this district vote because we know they're going to vote for Democrats, they can get away with that under this SAVE Act. They'll just, like, as people go into the polls, they'll give them their information, they'll ask for their ballot, and if the SAVE Act is followed strictly, then if your name on your driver's license or if your name on your poll figures isn't the same as your birth certificate, then they'll say you can't vote. And there's no time for you to actually appeal this if you don't know and you're going in to vote that day and you get there and they say, oh, your name isn't the same.
Which also they're trying to make it harder for you to vote by mail. And already in Kentucky we had such draconian laws around voting. It was just 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. whatever your time. We have Eastern and Central time here. We didn't have all these other options that have opened up since the pandemic: mail-in voting, early voting, etc. So we really, I know that it gets overwhelming when we talk about all this stuff, and I do want to mention Surge again, the Louisville showing up for racial justice, and then we can talk about the basketball game we went to. But so Louisville showing up for racial justice, and I want to tell you, I want to read a quote, and this goes back to Black History Month for me too. The battle is and always has been a battle for the hearts and minds of white people in this country. The fight against racism is our issue. It's not something that we're called on to help people of color with. We need to become involved with it as if our lives depended on it, because really, in truth, they do. And that is a quote by Ann Braden, who is a famous white civil rights activist, journalist, and an educator here in Kentucky. So I mentioned LSurge, LouisvilleSurge.org. They also have a big Facebook presence, and very specifically, and I have a lot of friends that are really getting involved, and I'm so excited about it. We have tons of upcoming trainings and actions. On February 16th, there's an online community defense training. On February 18th, there's another community defense training. This one's in person. On the 28th of February, we have nonviolent civil disobedience and direct action training. On March 9th, we have another community defense training. And on March 15th, we have another nonviolent civil disobedience and direct action training. The reason I mention this to you is I am still having conversations with white friends who don't know what to do. What can I do? I don't know what to do. So I'm telling you, there are so many things to do, and if you want to do something with a very organized organization that is really making an impact, sign up for one of these trainings at LouisvilleSurge.org.
Oh, let's see, there's another plane flying overhead. So.
By the way, I just want to make a commentary about all the planes that are flying overhead. So, again, we're a big UPS hub, right? And one of the ways that we have power is by using our money wisely and boycotting corporations owned by billionaires that are supporting Trump, right? So all of these planes are basically carrying our shit. People's Amazon stuff, all the stuff that we're buying from Walmart.com, Amazon.com, all the things, right? So I would love for us to be thinking much more carefully about where our money is going, buying less shit, going and I have been getting amazing stuff at swap meets, at thrift stores, etc. I know it sounds quaint, but this is people power. Where we spend our money is power. And so anyway,
right,
I'd love to also not have as much plane noise above my house all day long.
This is,
and all night long.
Right, especially during the holidays. That's when it's really bad. But yeah, like you said, UPS is a big air carrier here. It's very busy, which ordinarily would be a good thing. But the other side of this too is that UPS has fired or dismissed a bunch of people. And that's because Amazon decided that they weren't going to use UPS as much.
And you'll start to see a lot more Amazon trucks now. They're not using the UPS or FedEx anymore. They've got their own transportation.
Right, well, and that means that they're reducing the number of jobs in Kentucky as a result of this. So
well, and then you add on AI, and who needs people anymore? But anyway, let's go to U of L women's basketball.
Okay, that's worth doing. We went to the game this weekend, and they won again, which is great.
They're so good.
The team is very good. The men's team is also very good, but the women's team is, in terms of rankings, it's higher ranked in women's basketball than the men's team is in men's basketball. The men's team is probably in the top 25 in the country. The women's team is in the top 10. And the advantages for season ticket holders like me is that if the women's team remains in the top 16 by the time of the tournament, they will get to host the first 2 rounds of the tournament, and which is a big deal. They haven't done that in, I think it's 3 years now. And in the past, I've gone to the tournament when it was here. It's just, you're getting I just love going to tournaments. I went to the women's tournament, I think it was in 2022, in Columbus, Ohio. If the women's team gets into the Final Four this year, I plan to go to the tournament in the Final Four in Phoenix. But just this accessibility to a very popular team. If you, as Amy can attest, the crowds are huge. It's like one of the biggest it is one of the bigger draws in women's basketball. I think the last game we went to, there were at least 9,000 or 10,000 people.
Yeah.
And this is Louisville in an evening. Lots of kids. It's very family friendly. And the basketball is just really, really well done. The team is a really good team. And
your son and your grandsons are going to go.
Yeah, I've been with my son. I'm planning to take my grandsons this weekend. So, there are things to do to divert your attention from all the bad things going on in the world. So I would say if there are sports you like to do those. I was looking at getting a membership at the YMCA. That's, I can walk to the Y from here.
Support your local arts organizations.
There are just lots of local stuff. You go to the museums here.
Yeah.
The museums here are great. And back to Black History Month, we've got the Muhammad Ali Museum, which is one of the great figures in the world in professional sports, and also a person who was from Louisville. If you go back to the women's games, at the beginning of the fourth quarter, they always rally the crowd by showing a clip of Muhammad Ali saying what a great city Louisville, Kentucky is. It's the greatest city in the world. He's predicting that they're going to be another world champion from Louisville, Kentucky, and that gets the crowd really going. But there are so many things to do here that there are things that you can do to divert your attention from all the bad things that are going on, and sometimes you really need that.
Oh, you know what? I might as well do a couple of plugs for things that I'm involved with. I helped found a local group called Jewish Louisvillians for Peace, and we partner with local Palestinians to elevate the conversation about what's really happening in Palestine, so that we can support peace one day. Anyway, we have a film that we're co-sponsoring with a couple of other organizations, like the Justice for All People's Justice Center, and the film is No Other Land. And it's a very thoughtful film about what's happening in Palestine. It's on March 8th at First Unitarian, and it's free. And we also have a panel and a local Palestinian woman who's a physician, and a local Jewish former Israeli woman who's a professor at U of L is going to be on the panel. That's going to be great.
Yeah.
And then with Voces Novae, I just want to tell you where it is. So on March 15th, it's at 3 p.m., this concert. It's the regional premiere of a work called Creation by Dan Forrest, who is an unbelievable composer. I feel like this is such an epic piece of work. We are also going to be accompanied by a small orchestra, and it's at St. Michael Catholic Church, 3705 Stone Lakes Drive in Louisville, and you can purchase tickets at vocesnovae.louisville.org. I promise you, if you want to have a spiritual experience with singing and orchestra and this gorgeous, gorgeous piece of music, come join us on March 15th.
Okay. So that's, there are things that we can't let the constant barrage of news get us down. So things like going to these basketball games, going to concerts, taking part in museums, you have to cleanse your mind from all the other things going on in the arena these days. So what else do we have?
I think that's it. And, again, we're in the middle of Black History Month. If you have other things you want to share, please come to our website, thebluegrassbluespodcast.com. Let us know how we're doing, and let us know what you'd like to be hearing.
And we will post links to pretty much whatever we referred to at the bottom of this on our webpage. Plus, we do have this on YouTube, and there are other outlets. I think this also appears on Apple News or
Apple
Podcasts,
mm-hmm.
Right? So we have outlets.
Is it on Spotify now?
It should be. It should be, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So listen and
share with your friends.
Share.
We're so fun.
Give us ideas, because we are going to do this for as long as we can. And that's it for this week.
Take care.
So long. Our closing music is by John Chamberlain.